So let's go ahead and talk about the Los Angeles Clippers. They are at a really delicate spot with their organization and franchise future at this given point. They're in an 0-2 hole to the Utah Jazz right now in their second round series, and they are really close to becoming the second LA team to lose before the conference finals. A benchmark that was not only set for both teams, but was basically a given the past 2 years in a row. Now, at least for the Lakers, they won the NBA Finals last year in the bubble. They had enough injury issues this year to say that this year was never really going to be their year in the first place. The Clippers, on the other hand, lost a 3-1 lead last year in the second round of the playoffs to the Denver Nuggets. And like I said, are at that point where they could be out of the second round again this year. Now, yes, there's a chance that they come back. Yes, there's a chance that they end up winning the finals still, even though that seems almost impossible at this point. However, we've seen crazier things happen in the NBA. We saw the same Miami Heat team that got swept by the Milwaukee Bucks this year go to the NBA Finals last year in the bubble. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen in NBA history and in short-term NBA history, so it's not impossible to think that LA can come back and beat the Utah Jazz. However, if they do end up losing this series, I think it's a very easy thing, and I think it's a very possible thing that the LA Clippers look at trading one of their big name guys between Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. Now, the guy that they obviously could get the most out of is the two-time Finals MVP, Kawhi Leonard. And when you're trading somebody like Kawhi Leonard, you either need to be getting draft value or you need to be getting player value in compensation for somebody like Kawhi, because he's just that good of a player, especially given the fact that he's still in his prime. He still defensively is at the top of his game. Offensively, it seems like he almost gets better every single year. And he's one of those guys that's always going to be playing at his top capability, however he wants to be doing that. And I think really not a lot of teams are going to be able to just trade draft capital for Kawhi Leonard because LA is not going to want to give him up in the first place. Especially when you look at the fact they still have Paul George, they still have a really competitive team. So I think just supplying Paul George and the rest of that team with a bunch of young guys, they would look at getting an established vet and great player in the league. And I think the guy that really could be looked at is another player in LA, and that is Anthony Davis. Now, I don't necessarily know if Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard is the best trade just straight up for both of those teams, but I think when you look at the player on both sides and how they would be fitting with the other star of their team, I mean, Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James defensively is a really good mix. Even though LeBron is not at the top of his game defensively anymore, I still wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to drive at LeBron James. I wouldn't rather try to take him off the dribble. Um, and you pair him with Kawhi, who Kawhi honestly could make up for any mistake LeBron makes on the court. He's just that good defensively. And when you look at the other side of things, Paul George, I think, still has this chance to be at least a number two star on a team and be able to at least be a part of a playoff run. And somebody like Anthony Davis, if he is the number one option with that Clippers team, it gives them a lot of flexibility because, I mean, just having Anthony Davis down low and then Paul George around the perimeter, that's a scary thing for any defense to try to defend. So I think that really is a trade that will be looked at. I don't know if it will actually happen, but I think that would be actually a great option for both of those franchises. So let's go ahead and talk about the other team who right now is in a really, really delicate spot with their franchise future, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks. They won last night's game against the Brooklyn Nets. However, that's probably the ugliest playoff game we've seen either of these two teams play in this playoff run alone, and that was just an ugly game. I think I saw a stat that the Milwaukee Bucks scoring 86 points was the least amount of points scored in any win in like the past 2 or 3 years, at least this season. So yeah, that was just an ugly game all around, and of course it goes Milwaukee's way. But I think what really needs to be talked about first is, do they actually have a chance to win? And I don't just mean one or two more games. I mean this series against the Brooklyn Nets. We've seen that it took the Brooklyn Nets to lose one of their main stars in James Harden for this Milwaukee Bucks team to really even have a shot at winning today. And Milwaukee's down their own guy. They're down Dante DiVincenzo, but comparing him to James Harden is just not the same thing. And we saw, like, even in this game where Milwaukee kind of controlled it the whole time, there was moments where Giannis has that like 13-second violation at the free throw line. It's like the second time he's done that this playoff run. We saw, I think there's a video going around of him trying to drive at Blake Griffin, and he literally just, like, it's just really awkward. I just don't see how Milwaukee can win this series. You look at the scoring you look at the scoring that Milwaukee has. Giannis, it seems like he's an easy 30 points. Just it's easy for him to get it, but it's not really easy for the team. It's not really easy to watch him get 30 points a game. Chris Middleton can score 30 as well, but there's really no one else on this team who can score. And you just compare that to Brooklyn. I mean, you've got Joe Harris, you've got Bruce Brown, you've got Blake Griffin, you've got Nicholas Claxton off the bench. You've got a lot of guys who are really solid players in their own right, and you pair that with two of the top 15 players in the NBA right now, maybe two of the top 20 when you look at Kyrie Irving. But when you get James Harden back, you have three top 15 to 20 players between him, KD, and Kyrie. That's just unbeatable at this point. So yeah, I really don't see Milwaukee coming back. So now the other thing then to talk about with this Milwaukee team is what necessarily happens when they lose this series, because I honestly think even if they do win this series, they're not winning the finals. They're not. I don't even know if they would get past Philly or Atlanta. So what do? I think first off, they have to fire Budenholzer. I think Budenholzer has had a really easy path to becoming this almost overrated head coach. And it's not really anything against Budenholzer. It's just kind of the path that he was on. His first team he ever coached as an NBA head coach was an Atlanta Hawks team that had 4 All-Stars on the team and was the number 1 seed in the NBA. Now, while you might say he has a part in that, yeah, he probably does. But at the same time, he inherited the team with 4 All-Stars. 4 guys who were pretty much in their prime that All-Star year. Kyle Korver was at the top of his game. Al Horford, Jeff Teague. Who was the 4th All-Star on that team? It might have been Joe Johnson. I forget who the 4th All-Star was on the team. But, 4 All-Stars on the team is no joke. And, it was Paul Millsap. Not Joe Johnson. Paul Millsap. Anyways, he's inherited some really good teams. You look at his Milwaukee team when he inherited it. It was Giannis, Chris Middleton, Malcolm Brogdon, a lot of other really solid guys. So I think if they lose again, he pretty much has to go. I would almost think that Chris Middleton or Giannis have to go, because this was basically the best version of Milwaukee that we've seen since both of those guys have been there, and they can't win. They just don't win because of the way that Giannis plays and because of the way that him and Chris Middleton kind of coexist. Even though they score, between the two of them, they score at all 3 levels, not each one of them can score at all 3 levels. It's kind of one goes from mid-range to three-point land, and it's like Giannis is at three-point land to the paint, and it just doesn't mesh well for some reason. So one of those two would have to go. It would probably be Chris Middleton, because if Milwaukee gave up on Giannis this early in his career and he went somewhere and won a ring, I don't think their fans would ever forgive them. I think Jrue Holiday would have to go too, because he has not been successful in this series. He just hasn't. You score 15 points a game and you're getting a $200 million contract extension. I just don't see how Milwaukee could really be happy with themselves with how Jrue Holiday has played this postseason. So I think he would have to go as well. And Milwaukee's going to look different next year, I think, no matter what. I think one of them is going to be gone, whether Giannis requests a trade, whether it's Chris Middleton just gets traded, whether it's Jrue Holiday just gets traded. They're going to look different, a lot different, if they lose this series, which I honestly think they do. With all of that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you at this point is much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.